Welcome to The Quill and the Quantum, the podcast where we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence and the art of writing. I'm your host, Kathy Norris, and in each episode, we'll talk to those authors and other creatives who use or refuse to use AI in their writing process. Today's guest is middle school teacher Christian Ravard. Christian has been teaching middle school more than 14 years and has had a front row seat to the changes that have taken place in instruction as a result of AI. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
The first thing I want to ask you is there anything that you would like the audience to know about you before we get going?
I am a husband of 15 years. I have a 13-year-old beautiful daughter. I'm passionate about my profession, and equally passionate about where I get to do my profession in Inglewood, California.
Well said and beautifully said, Christian. Definitely. The first question I want to ask you is, when did you first notice AI having an impact on your middle school students?
I would say actively probably 2 years ago.
Oh,
Where it began to be something that we all as educators were hearing about, but really didn't know how to address. And as the years have gone further and further from that point, it's been more of a topic of conversation, not only with the current students that I teach and the current educators I teach with, but even more so with former students, particularly the ones in college.
mhm. So tell me, Christian, how do you think about AI these days? And what is it that what is it good for and what is it not so good for?
Well, I mean, it's such a huge unknown. I
Mhm.
don't think the world as a whole understands exactly what artificial intelligence is. There is an aspect of artificial intelligence that is beyond the scope of my parents' generation, and my generation. Um, the ability for a program like ChatGPT in less than a year to have soaked up everything that has been published on the internet, and you being able to ask it a question and it is providing you with an answer of everything that has ever been on the internet. I think it's hard to quantify. I'm a I'm a I'm an adult that grew up in the days of who took the P encyclopedia. I grew up in the days of read, write a report. Um, I went to college under the premise of spending hours and hours and nights in a library, waiting for someone to return a particular book. To know that all of those books, all of that knowledge is literally at a keystroke is both exciting, I think, from a medical perspective, from a technological perspective. How can we be more efficient as a human race? But also is scary from an educator's perspective in terms of how is this being used to not necessarily to necessarily forward education, and not stunt someone into using it in terms of just cheating. Um, so I think, I mean, it's a hard pie to divide up. There's both, risk, major risk, and major reward.
Well, and you've touched on both of those as far as some of the rewards being technological in nature and some of the risks having to do with, you'd mentioned plagiarism, I believe. How do you address these risks currently? And is it something that you ended up doing individually in your own classroom, or was there leadership from the school administration in this area?
There was leadership from the school. We need to get ahead as much as we can of this. And then there was also my own research. When I'm helping students, I mean, it's been a long time since I've done eighth grade at math. And for me to be able to go to an AI program, type in a problem and be like, oh, I remember this, and then be able to take what it's given me and then be able to explain it in a way that a child's going to understand has been powerful. Um, our current math teacher has actually told the students to use Chat GPT to type these problems in that you don't understand, have it explain exactly everything, um, and then study it. So there's both this risk and reward, as it relates to what you're typing in and the answers that you're given and how much you as a human are really absorbing and then applying in your own way to be able to make sense and really make do with what answers are being given.
I'm fascinated at the idea of feeding ChatGPT the math problem. Can you give me an example of a prompt that does that, and talk a bit about how perhaps how your prompting skills have changed over time with AI?
I don't know if my prompting skills, because I'm cheap. I was raised by a bunch of cheap people. And not cheap in terms of like we're not going to spend money on good food and good things, but I'm not going to pay somebody to do something that I can type a full paragraph in Google and there's 400 videos I could watch. So the prompting for me is the easiest part because I could type whatever I need to type in the language that makes sense to me. And it again, in all of these platforms, has soaked up all of this language in order to decipher exactly what I'm asking in order to provide an answer. If it's something as simple as a math equation or a word problem, what is incredible about it is its ability to break everything down. It's not just problem answer, it's problem. This is what we're dealing with. And in each section, this is what you need to use because this is what this is called, and this is what that is called. So, in some senses, with this generation that's really, really geared towards instant gratification, I can see a lot, in particular middle school, that they're not going to read it all. They're not going to necessarily be interested to know the meat and potatoes of what it's actually showing, which makes it easier on a math educator when you just see problem answer. Like, how did you arrive at that? Um, for me, it's easy because again, I'm typing in, okay, a pipe that looks like this broke underneath this thing and it made this noise. And this thing that looks like this popped out, and it's boom, YouTube's got 400 videos of that little thing underneath this thing that looks like this with a name and a term and a price on Amazon. So for me, it's never been a prompting issue. If I'm helping a student in particular with math, for me, it's really, really about just really teaching me again or reteaching me what I learned forever ago so I can teach it to a child.
You mentioned math. I'm curious about writing and AI. Do you teach writing differently with AI, or do you? And I'll leave it at that. Leave the question at that.
No, the written word for me, I teach health. I teach health in PE and I teach a leadership class. And their penmanship is so horrible that I require everything written in a notebook. I grew up with a teacher as a mom that didn't have a program to input grades. So nighttime for my mother was VCR recorded Days of Our Lives, All My Children, General Hospital is going on in the background, and she's correcting what she did not have the time for. was to go through every problem or every paragraph to make sure it was correct. What she understood was if my penmanship was good, I took the time to write it. I took the time to think about it. I've applied that with these same kids 30 years later, which is yes, everything is going to be prompted in an app. However, it needs to be written down. So in terms of the written word, I can tell when a child has actually written something, and they're still very much in copy paste.
Mm.
And so if they turn things in a word that I know they couldn't spell to begin with, let alone pronounce, I'm that type of teacher that calls them up and tells them, "What is this? What word is this? Tell me what that means. Use that word in a sentence." You know, so it's real easy.
Busted.
It's real easy for on the middle school level in particular to be able to decipher these were their words based upon what they're writing in class, in particular for me and for others. Um, and you got this off of Wikipedia or, and I wouldn't even say an AI situation. Um, it's a lot easier.
You bring up a good point. How do you, I will throw the question out, is AI different significantly from Wikipedia or from going to the library and doing research as you and I both used to do? What do you see as the major differences?
The difference is it is very different than Wikipedia. Because Wikipedia has the ability for any author to be able to come in and change its information. It is
Hmm.
not a reliable source. Will never be a reliable source for any collegiate person turning in a paper. They would never consider any of their stuff. The stuff that they will send you to on Wikipedia in terms of, go to Reuters, go to AP, go to Al Jazeera, read
Hmm.
this policy paper. Those are things that could be used, but Wikipedia is not a reliable source. AI has taken everything on the internet and they've condensed it in a way so quickly that when you ask it a question, so for instance, I recently herniated a vertebrae in my back, and one of my concerns is just being able to stay physically fit. And for me to be able to ask ChatGPT, what cardiovascular exercises can I do with and being very specific, an L5S1 herniated disc? And it gives me all the information. All of this information is being condensed from every hospital that's ever written a report, every researcher that's ever written a report, every person that has typed in a chat, this is my symptoms, this is what's worked. Um, it's 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 the ability to have sucked into a black hole every library on a URL address. And it did so in less than a year. It took the world potentially millions of years to be able to write these texts. And in a year, these programs have been able to suck it all in, keep it, and then in an algorithm, be able to provide you the best answer given how you asked the question.
What I hear you saying is that on the pro side, AI has this global reach and thoroughness, but on the con side, the accuracy is something that needs to be verified. I read something once that said that AI is a great tool, but it needs a human being at the beginning and the end of the process to be able to evaluate what's going in and the veracity of what's coming out, for sure.
If it's being applied to it, if the purpose of AI is ultimately going to be applied to humans, then it needs a human at the beginning and it needs a human at the end. If it is going to be applied to what my father talks about in terms of Total Recall and Terminator and the fear of the robots, which is a legitimate, it
Concern, yeah.
seemed far-fetched, but there are countries that have invested in money in programming robots for war. Then there's an issue. What I can see with AI in particular is it is not going to replace the written word, how powerful the written word is, how powerful it is to see. It's one thing to go to, I've been to Washington, D.C. several times, and it's one thing to look up on the Smithsonian's website and see from the first time that my mother took me to Washington, D.C., one of the first things that we visited and always visited was where the United States Constitution is. She would always make me find that clause where it said that slaves were worth three-fifths of a person. It's one thing to see it on a screen, and it's another thing to see it in front of your face. That there's an emotional connection to know that hundreds of years ago, someone actually wrote something that is now in front of you. And even still today, on the minor things, kids passing notes is still a thing, and it's a thing to get a note from a little girl that has a crush on you, as a 13-year-old. Hey, do you like me? X, yes, X, no, versus just getting it on this thing. Something that you can hold. The tangible aspect of the written word is powerful. It's absolutely powerful. I mean, it's something that I talk about. I mention all the time that the written word is something no one is going to be able to escape from. I mean, there's a reason that Barnes and Noble is still open. That those that go to Barnes and Noble, they still do the same things that I used to love to do as a kid when I got a book, which is open it up and take a smell. And
Mm.
mentioning that to avid readers, that are 12 and 13 years old, they're fascinated by the written word. Um, so I agree. There's a human at the beginning and there's a human at the end, that is required in a lot of respects.
Well, Chris, I think this is a great spot for us to wrap this up. Is there any other comment that you'd like to make about AI that you haven't had an opportunity to yet?
My biggest concern with AI technology doesn't even have to do with middle school or high school children. My biggest concern with AI technology has to do with the collegiate level. I think one of the reasons why our school, in particular, and other schools should be getting on the bandwagon of getting ahead of this is a large percentage of those that are currently in college are using AI technology to simply get by in college. And they're getting the grades. They're writing the policy papers. They're writing the research papers, but they're writing these things under the guise of using AI. And my biggest fear is that in the next 5 to 6 years, we're going to have a large crop of people that are going to have these degrees and have all of these accolades that don't know anything about the subjects that they're teaching because they spent the bulk of their time researching how to have some other thing write these things instead of them having to spend hours and books of highlights and printouts and excerpts in order to turn all of those into their own thinking. That is my biggest concern currently, is what is this crop of college students that graduate in the next 5 to 6 years? How actually prepared are they for the fields that they're graduating from? And if we don't get ahead of it, and I think we should actually go a little bit further than middle school. I think this is something that quite honestly should be in elementary school. It should be
Mhm.
something, I mean, my daughter, one of her first toys was an iPad, and it was all educational. But before she could actually put full sentences together, to watch her little finger navigate an iPad and flick through and know certain things, this should be intertwined into what they're doing as well. That they should know the differences, that they should want to be able to seek knowledge, not just necessarily have knowledge just be given to them, but to the process of seeking it, to me, I think is it's just like the process of preparing to play a football game or playing a sport, that all the hours that you spend beforehand, quickly are forgotten the moment that you win. However, you know how to prepare. And my concern, honestly, is where are these college kids at when it comes to it? And where are we going to be at it as a civil society? Um, if many of them have used this tool or these tools in order to be successful in college.
Well, Chris, you have given us a lot to think about, areas that I hadn't considered. I was focusing on the middle school aspect, but your observation that how much are the students really absorbing um, when they're using AI is it's a good question. It's a good test.
Hmm.
Thank you. This has been a fantastic interview. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Oh, and Chris, if people wanted to um, follow up with you, is there a way that they connect with you? They can connect with you on
Sure.
social media. What would that be?
It wouldn't be on social media, but they could connect directly with me through email. You can email me at it's C and it's R-A-V as in Victor, A-R-D as in David, and it's the number 2000 at AOL.com.
I should also add that this is being taped in the year 2024. So Christian's prediction about 5 years from now, let's see what's going on in the colleges. That puts us at 2029, and so
Hmm.
we'll have to do a follow-up podcast,
We
Christian.
will.
Okay,
We will.
okay.
Hopefully with no robots holding us up.
Thanks so much for your time. I know you've been working all day with the middle school students, and it's teachers like you that make the difference. So thank you very
Well, thank
much.
you. I appreciate it.
Take care now.
All right.